Hello everyone, welcome back to Earth Science. Today we're going to continue with the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the gases that separate Earth from the rest of space. We know that the sun gives energy to the Earth in the form of light. Before we continue with that, let's remind ourselves there are three ways that energy is transferred from one way to another. When energy is transferred from a solid, for example, touching something hot, it's called conduction. When energy transfers from something liquid, for example, ice melting in warm water, it's called convection. And finally, when heat is transferred in the form of light, it is called radiation. And this is the type of heat transfer the sun gives to Earth. The sun sends heat to Earth in the form of light. Now, why does the temperature change in the morning and evening, in the summer and winter, and in the equator and the North Pole? Well, this has got to do with the angle of insolation. Insolation is just short for the words incoming solar radiation, which is a fancy way of saying sunlight. So the angle of sunlight is going to affect. As you can see, in the flashlight on the left, it is shining down vertically. The light is going to be a lot more concentrated and intense, and the same thing would be with the heat. On the right, you will see the flashlight is on an angle, and the light is more spread out and not as intense. The same thing happens with the sun. In the morning, the sun is rising and the angle is low. By the time the sun reaches high in the sky at noon, you have the greatest insolation, or the greatest intensity of sunlight. The warmest part of the day is afternoon. The same thing happens with location. By the equator, the sun rays are vertical and therefore the most intense. But by the North Pole, it's going to be on a wide angle and not as intense. And again, the same thing applies to summer and winter. In the summer, the rays that the Earth receives in the northern hemisphere where we live is going to be a lot more intense since it's vertical. In the winter, the rays that we receive are going to be on a wide angle and it's not going to be as intense. Another thing that affects the temperature is going to be cloud cover. If you remember, the Earth reflects most of the sunlight it gets, but if clouds are covering the surface, the clouds will reflect the sun before the Earth's surface can even get to them. So on a cloudy day, the temperature is going to be lower than it is on a sunny, clear sky day. Imagine you're at a beach and you're sitting on the sand. You notice how warm it feels, but then you go to the water and you notice that the water is a lot cooler. Why is that? Well, the land gets hotter and colder faster than the water does. The reason for this is that water has what's called a higher specific heat. Specific heat means energy needed to heat up. Water needs more energy to be heated than land does, and therefore it will take a lot longer for the water to get warm, while the land is already warm. But the water will hold on to that heat longer, since sunlight can heat deeper into the water than on land. By land, it just heats the first top layers, but by water, once it's heated, it will hold on to that heat much longer. Another reason that will affect the temperature of different places is the light and texture. Light and smooth surfaces will reflect the light, and they will not absorb as much energy as dark and rough surfaces. As you can see in these glaciers, they reflect the sunlight because they are light and smooth, and therefore are going to stay a lot colder than other areas. So to answer our question, why is temperature different in different areas and times? Well, there are a few answers. The angle of insolation, the angle of sunlight, will affect the intensity. If there are clouds, they may stop the rays from coming in. Land and water will have different temperatures and different times that it takes to get to that temperature. And finally, the texture and color will play a role on the temperature as well. One final thing we'll discuss about the atmosphere today is air pollution. An air pollutant is something in the air that is capable of harming humans or the environment. The first example of this is acid rain. Acid rain is when water vapor in the air mixes with different chemicals and turns acidic. Organisms like fish that cannot handle high acid will die if the acid rain reaches the water. Acid rain also takes out nutrients from the ground, and plants that need nutrients to live can't get them and will die or decay. And acid rain also affects structures made out of limestone or marble, like this statue over here. It will weather the statue. Another form of air pollution is smog. As you can see, it's this yellowish haze that forms from pollution like car exhaust. This can cause breathing problems and affect plant growth and crops. If you remember when we talked about the atmospheric structure, we said that there is a layer called the stratosphere. The stratosphere has an ozone, and the ozone layer prevents harmful sun rays from getting into Earth. Well, since the 80s, scientists have told us that certain products we use creates ozone depletion, or makes a hole in the ozone and causes harmful rays to get into Earth. This can not only hurt Earth, but also can hurt people who are affected by it, giving them skin conditions. And finally, greenhouse gases. A greenhouse gas, like carbon or methane, traps heat in the Earth and doesn't let it escape. Factories and cutting down forests have contributed more methane and carbon into the air. This has caused the Earth to get warmer. The term for this is called global warming, which can cause glaciers to melt and the sea levels to rise. Scientists warn that the weather can become uncertain and that people living near the water will need to relocate. Back in September, there was a demonstration in New York City where people came out to talk about climate. People wanted to voice their opinions about the potential problems with global warming. All right, that's all for today. Make sure you answered the questions in the assignment, and I'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.